Hi there. Immigration. There are a lot of legends about, with tips like how to dress, how not to dress, to have a beard or not to have a beard, who to choose, should you go for this guy or this girl, what age. It doesn't really matter, or maybe it does, but if you're not a criminal, I think you're fine. So in this video, I will share with you my experience with the immigration and also the questions that you might be asked. And also I do have a funny story that I really need to tell you, so we'll have a look at all of that, all right? So let's get on it. I personally have never been denied the entry to the US, but if you have ever, for whatever reason, even if it was for no reason, been denied the entry, then the procedure might be a bit uncomfortable. But if that has never happened and, as I said, you're not a prisoner or a criminal, then I'm sure you will be okay. First, we're gonna go over the questions that you might be asked. The first question is definitely going to be, what's the purpose of your visit? So they can ask you this in many different accents, depends who you'll get, but they're going to use the word purpose. What's the purpose of your visit? They will be asking you questions which might look like they're similar or they will be the same, but they're just checking if you're lying or not. So always answer the same, yeah? Second will be, how long are you staying? They always need to know how long you're staying. Another way how they can ask is, when are you flying home? Do you have any connections in the US? Do you know anybody in the US? Do you have any relatives in the US? Are you going to work? You shouldn't be going to work if you don't have the work permit, which is really difficult to get, or you can only get it under some specific conditions. So I presume most of the people travel to the US for just fun, for pleasure. Then they can also ask you, are you traveling for pleasure or business? This is another way if you're going to be making money or not, are you going to work or not? And they like to know the location of where you will be staying. So the question is, where are you staying? Where are you staying? We always use the verb stay with temporary living somewhere. Yeah, even if it's a couple months, it still might be staying. So it's good to have some hotel in your mind that you will tell them, or even have the address printed out, or maybe your friend's place if you have some connection there. They also ask you how many times you have been to the US. So typically the question, is this your first time in the US, or is this the first time you're visiting the US? Tell them the truth, because they have the records about it, so you cannot lie about that. Have you ever been to the US? Another way of asking the same thing. They also need to know if you have sufficient funds, so they might ask you, do you have the sufficient funds to stay here, or do you have enough money for this trip, or who is paying for this trip? Do you have a credit card? Things like that. It's good to have some money if you're traveling abroad. I guess that's pretty basic. Who packed your luggage? Just in case they find some drugs in your suitcase and you'll tell them, oh, I didn't pack it. They're gonna ask you this, and if you say you did, it's gonna be really hard to get out of it. When I was flying to New York, I met this girl, and she was flying to New York for the third time. And first visit to the US, she was denied the access. And then, of course, when you're flying the next time, you have to fill out the form. And in the form, you have to say that previously you had been denied the access. So for her, the whole procedure and the immigration was really scary and really hard. She was locked in a room for a bunch of hours and questioned all the time, even though she hasn't done anything wrong. So things happen, I just think that in 99% of the cases it will be okay. A lot of people think that they need to have really good English to get through the immigration. I can prove that it's not true, because I have a friend who I was flying to Hawaii with, and that was really hilarious because his English was like a beginner, or maybe less than a beginner. I think he finished in the first lesson. So we got separated, of course. You can't go in a group of people to the immigration procedure. It's always an individual thing. And then we met behind it, right? He was telling me how his interview went, and we put it together from what he could remember, and that was really funny. So first he was asked, where are you flying? Okay, but you know, as I said, he was a beginner. The only word he understood was where, so he thought the guy was asking him, where are you from? Right? Where are you from is the first question that you learn at school. So he told him Czech Republic. And that's very strange when you're in Canada flying to Hawaii, and obviously you're not flying to Czech Republic. So I think this was the first time when the guy was like, what? The second question was, can I have your boarding pass? Well, all he understood was pass, so he was trying to force him the passport. And he didn't want, of course he wanted that too, but he wanted to see the boarding pass. So he was like, pass, yeah, pass. No, it's not the same. So that was the second time that the guy was like, what is going on? Well, then finally he told him that he wanted the plane ticket. So plane was something he remembered. So he gave him the plane ticket, the boarding pass, in other words. Well, the third thing was collecting biometrics, right? Because they scan your fingerprints or they even take a picture of you. So then it was very difficult for the officer to explain to him that he wanted to scan his thumb, right? So he wanted him to put the thumb on the scanner. But thumb, that's a word that he was not able to understand. So the guy, the officer, showed him like this. And my friend was like, yeah, it's good. Well, then the guy was pretty much over it. He was really done now. And then he asked him, what's the purpose of his visit? Well, that was too hard for him. He's like, what? Didn't understand. So he asked him, are you traveling for work or for pleasure, trips? And he heard trip, oh, trip, no drugs, no. And that was very funny because when we met, he was asking me, like, what does it mean, screw? And I'm like, what? And he is like, really, yeah, what does it mean, screw? And I'm like, who told you that? And he's like, the guy, the officer told me that. I'm like, no, he didn't. And he said, really? He said, screw. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, see, so even with bad English, you can get through. But maybe you have to keep the bad English all the way so that you don't know what they call you when they're saying goodbye. My friend had a very simple strategy. He wanted to put on the American smile, you know, and be all positive and funny and chatty. But chatty wasn't really something he was able to do. So that was his experience. It was very funny, very hilarious. But I do have to say that the immigration officers have a really hard job. You know, immigration can be quite fun, as you see, so don't be scared of it. If you have to go through this, it means you're flying somewhere. It means you're flying for some holiday. So it's a positive thing, okay? The chances that they'll return you back aren't that high. So have fun traveling and prepare for these questions. Just prepare what you would answer if you were asked these questions. Yeah? Alrighty. So good luck. Bye. Have a nice trip.